If you think this match between Portugal and Colombia will be decided by talent alone, the chart for this kickoff tells a much more intriguing story. When I cast the horary chart for the exact moment this match begins, the very first thing that caught my attention was how balanced these two energies are. Portugal naturally carries the weight of being the favorite, but the planet representing Portugal starts the match in a strong position, while gradually losing some of its stability as the game unfolds. That usually doesn't point to an easy victory. It points to a team capable of controlling the opening stages, but forced to work much harder than expected as the match develops. Colombia, on the other hand, appears under a very different influence. Rather than trying to dominate possession from the opening whistle, the chart suggests patience. It shows a team willing to absorb pressure, wait for mistakes, and strike when the opportunity finally appears. The moon, which in horary astrology often reveals how the story of a match unfolds, immediately caught my attention. Its movement suggests clear shifts in momentum throughout the game. This is not the kind of match that stays predictable for 90 minutes. The team looking comfortable early may not be the one feeling comfortable near the final whistle. Mars also plays a major role in this chart. Whenever Mars becomes this active in an important football match, I usually expect a much more physical contest. Strong tackles, tactical fouls, heated moments between players and an official who will have to make difficult decisions more than once. I don't immediately see a red card, but I do expect several yellow cards before this match is over. There is another detail that stood out almost instantly. Mercury highlights movement down the wings. That usually translates into overlapping runs, dangerous crosses, blocked deliveries, and plenty of balls being forced behind the goal line. If that energy unfolds the way this chart suggests, corners could quietly become one of the biggest stories of this match, especially if Portugal establishes early pressure. But while all of that is interesting, none of those details surprised me as much as what I found when I looked at the opening phase of the moon's journey, because that single aspect may reveal which team is most likely to strike first, and it changes the entire interpretation of this game. As I continued reading the chart, that first impression became even stronger. The moon's next application favors the side that takes the initiative early, and in this chart, Portugal clearly carries that advantage. It doesn't suggest total domination, but it does indicate a greater chance of creating the first truly dangerous opportunity of the match. Because of that, I believe Portugal has the stronger possibility of scoring the opening goal. But this is exactly where the chart becomes fascinating. The energy doesn't suggest that Portugal will simply take control and cruise to victory. The moment the moon changes its relationship with the other significators, the rhythm of the match begins to shift. Colombia starts finding spaces that weren't there before, and the entire emotional balance of the game changes. This is the kind of configuration I often see in matches that appear comfortable for one team before suddenly becoming wide open. Mercury continues emphasizing quick transitions and movement between the lines. That tells me both teams should create dangerous moments, particularly after halftime when fatigue begins creating more room on the pitch. That same planetary movement reinforces something else I rarely ignore. Most of the dangerous attacks seem likely to develop through the flanks. Fast overlapping runs, repeated crosses into the penalty area, and defenders constantly clearing the ball under pressure usually lead to an increasing number of corner kicks as the match progresses. If Portugal establishes sustained pressure early, that trend could begin before halftime. Meanwhile, Mars remains highly active throughout almost the entire chart. That doesn't necessarily point toward a dirty match, but it does suggest intense challenges, tactical fouls, and an official who will be forced to keep control with yellow cards as emotions rise. There is another pattern I always pay close attention to. The chart suggests that controlling possession will not necessarily mean controlling the game emotionally. Portugal may spend long periods dictating the tempo, yet Colombia repeatedly appears capable of creating dangerous counterattacks whenever space opens up. One defensive mistake, one misplaced pass, or one quick transition could completely change the direction of this match. And when I reached the final sequence of planetary aspects, I found one last indication that ultimately shaped my prediction. That final piece brought the entire reading together, and it completely changed the way I see the ending of this game. When I reached the final stage of the chart, everything began fitting together. The moon's closing aspects rarely leave much room for doubt, and in this reading, they don't point toward one team completely overwhelming the other. Instead, they describe a match that will be decided by small moments, emotional control, and the ability to capitalize on a single opportunity. Portugal still holds the stronger overall position. Its significator maintains enough dignity to suggest greater composure when the pressure reaches its highest point. That doesn't guarantee victory, but it does indicate a team more likely to make the right decisions when the game becomes chaotic. Colombia, however, never disappears from the chart. In fact, several configurations continue showing moments where Colombia becomes extremely dangerous, especially after winning possession and attacking with speed. That's why I would not be surprised if both teams find the back of the net during this match. Mars remains highly influential until the very end of the reading. That usually produces a physically demanding contest, plenty of tactical fouls, and several yellow cards, as both teams fight for every ball. The chart also suggests one or two controversial moments involving the referee. Whether it's a penalty appeal, a possible VAR review, or a decision that sparks protests, I wouldn't be surprised if officiating becomes one of the talking points after the final whistle. Another pattern continues repeating itself. Mercury keeps highlighting attacks down the wings. The pressure from wide areas should generate repeated crosses, defensive clearances, and a steady flow of corner kicks, especially during the second half when the chasing team begins committing more players forward. One final detail deserves attention. The chart favors fresh energy entering the match late. I wouldn't be surprised if a substitute becomes directly involved in one of the decisive moments, whether by scoring, providing an assist, or changing the rhythm of the game entirely. After combining the Horary chart with both teams' recent performances, my overall reading remains consistent. Portugal has the better chance of scoring first. Colombia has the quality to respond. Both teams have a realistic opportunity to score. The match looks physically demanding, with several yellow cards, a healthy number of corner kicks, and at least one moment capable of changing the entire direction of the game. If I had to summarize this reading into one final prediction, I would give Portugal a slight edge to win by a single goal, with one standing out as the most likely scoreline. A draw remains a realistic possibility if Colombia converts its counter-attacking chances, but overall the symbolic balance of the chart continues leaning slightly toward Portugal. Now I'd like to hear your prediction. Before kickoff, leave your scoreline in the comments, and after the match we'll come back to see how closely this reading matched what actually happened on the pitch.